It's getting a bit colder now, so we're going to install a diesel heater. This is what you get with the plainer 2D heater. The heating unit itself, you get a air inlet pipe with a muffler on it, which will go to the inlet, the fuel in, which is given there by a fuel line, fuel pump, wiring for the fuel pump, and then a fuel pickup line that will go in to the heater, be burnt, and then come out the exhaust port, which goes into the exhaust tubing, which also has a fiberglass insulated sleeve that you can put over it. There's also a muffler to go there, and bracketry to hold the fuel pump and the exhaust pipes and everything. For inside the van, you have the exhaust, which will come out here with the warm air, which will go through this black conduit, which has a little outlet port as well. To control the unit, you have a wiring harness which goes to the control unit, which will control the temperature that you want it at. You also have cable ties, wiring for it, which includes some fuses in it also, and an instruction manual. First step is to mount the heater. We're going to be doing that under the passenger seat. There's some wiring in the drive shaft runs through the middle of the seat, so I don't really want to go underneath or go through that. There's some room in the passenger seat over here, so we're going to be going and mounting the unit about here. First step is to clean it up. All clean. So I've popped these rubber caps off out of these holes here, and this hole here doesn't actually go to the ground. It only drops down about 5 centimeters, so I'm going to go underneath the vehicle and see why I can't see the ground here. But I can see the ground through this one. Now we're underneath the van, and that is one of the holes underneath the passenger seat. The other hole that I put my finger in and couldn't get all the way through, I think is inside this beam here. So that's where we definitely don't want to drill to. So what I'm going to do is measure from this hole here across to the start of this beam, and that's going to be as far to the side of that hole that I can mount my unit, because I need the exhaust and inlet to be something like inside of this flat area so they can both come down. So from the hole back we can go about 10 centimeters from the edge of the hole, and on the side we can go about 7 centimeters. This is the hole that we're looking at underneath the van, and we measured 7 centimeters on left and right where some chassis rails are. So this area inside here is where we want to be putting all our mounting holes, as we need to avoid where the rails were. These might look symmetrical, but actually one end is your inlet and one end is your outlet for all the warm air. You want the outlet to be pointed towards your living space. Check your manual as to which end is which. So we'll be wanting the unit pointed this way, which will go into the back of the van. Here looks like a good space. There's enough room for the heater to suck in air from the front, and enough room for us to point the conduit to point it out the back of the van. There's a rubber gasket on the bottom, and I'll just push that down, lift the heater out, and then that's a template on where we need to drill our holes. And as we can see, all the holes that we'll be drilling are all inside of the dotted lines, so we won't be hitting any of the beams. Just got a Sharpie, and we're just going to drill around all the holes to mark where we need to drill, and then we'll remove the gasket and drill the holes. And now I've got our holes drawn, and now we're going to drill. For the larger holes, which are the inlet and exhaust holes, we're going to be using a 32mm hole saw. For the smaller holes, we're going to be using a 6mm, but for both holes I'm going to be pilot holing them with just a 3mm drill bit. Before doing anything else, we're just going to go under the van and make sure that all those holes aren't in the beam or anything, and that we can access them all. So now we're going to enlarge the holes to 6mm. Now I've got a small round file, and I'm just going to go around the holes and just take off any sharp bits. Now we're going to vacuum up the metal shavings. We've put the unit in and it fits through all the holes. So now that's complete, and now we're going to drill the holes for the air ducting. The warm air is going to exit the heater, go through this ducting, through the little vent which will be on the back of the seat, which will push the warm air into the living area. For mounting this vent here, it's got a flat back area here, so we need to mount it on a flat surface. So really the only place that's large enough to mount it is this area in here. Because there's a cabinet behind me, we're going to want to mount it as close to the middle of the vehicle as we can, so then the air can come out and then freely flow down the van. I'm going to lay the vent up to it, and then I can see where the sheet metal starts to go flat again, and I'm going to start to do a circle around it. Kind of there, I'll find the middle of the circle, and then we'll drill a hole there. But the hole we're going to drill is only this size here, as that's the only bit that's going to go through the metal. It's 60mm, so we have a 60mm hole saw. Like with the last holes, we're going to do a pilot hole first. This hole's quite big, so I'm just going to put some WD-40 on it just to lubricate the car.
Make sure you clean up all the metal shards, because if they get onto the middle of your van and sit there and just rub and rub, they can cause scratches that could cause rust.
Now we're just going to file this hole. And now I'm going to paint the holes with rust proofing paint. Now we're going to put this in place and see how much of the ducting we need. We're going to be using the hot air ducting pipe and connecting it from the heater unit to the vent. I'm going to screw this end onto the vent and then measure how long we need to make it to the heater. Now we can see that we want to cut it about here. We'll do one cut a little bit long and then we'll see how it attaches to it, and then we'll cut some more off if need be. And now we just want to see if that cut was enough. Oh. There we go. And now we're going to go underneath the van, bolt the unit down to the chassis and do the intake and exhaust. There's the 4 mounting studs from the heater unit, so we're just going to put a washer, a lock nut and then a nut on that, tighten it up, and the unit should be in place. Awesome, all done. Now we just have the intake to do, the fuel and the exhaust. The inlet tube is the easiest to do. You just put this here up to the heater unit, tighten up the clip so then it's nice and tight, and then put this end here somewhere where water, dirt or anything else isn't going to get into it. Underneath the van, this is the air inlet here next to the fuel inlet. We're just going to run that down towards the front of the vehicle, and there's this little pocket hole kind of thing here in behind the mud flap. So we're just going to put it in there where it's nice and dry there, there's no dirt there, so it looks like a good spot to put it. This beam here has a nice little hole that I can feed a cable tie through. And then that can go around this tube when I have 2 hands, and it will hold it up in place. And now we're just going to tighten the clamp going up to the intake. And now that's on there nice and snug. That's the air inlet done. We've tightened up the clamp here. Got a cable tie holding it here, and then the end of it just points up into this area behind the wheel well. And now we're going to be working on the exhaust and the fuel line. Using this hole here and some of the holes for the mounting of the unit, I've found where I want to mount the fuel pump. It's just about here. I'm going to drill it from the top so that way I make sure I don't hit the unit. Before I make the hole big, I might just go underneath and just double check that that is the right spot. There's a little hole I drilled there, and that means that the fuel pump will mount up just there, which I think is perfect. It's enough room here to here to make a 90-degree bend for the fuel line to come up into, and then I think it'll have to exit here, go around the intake and then into there. The guidelines for the fuel pump says no more than 4 meters and after the fuel pump and 1 meter before the fuel pump, so we have enough room to get under those lengths. I drilled the hole bigger and have put a bolt through on the inside and is stopping it from rotating on the inside. I'm just going to push the fuel pump through it, put the nut on. I'm just going to have it loose at the moment, just a little bit tight, so then I can still rotate it to make it easy to try and get the hoses on each end on. But for now, it's the fuel pump in. Now I just have to cut and do the hoses from the outlet to the inlet. One thing I forgot to mention is that on the pump there's a little arrow here. Make sure the arrow is pointing in the direction that you want the fuel to flow. There's also the plugs here for the connector, and I'll show you what to do with the electrical bit later on. This is the white fuel line that came with the kit, and also these small segments of black fuel line. The white fuel line actually just goes inside the black fuel line. It's quite a tight fit, and then when you clamp it down, it'll clamp it nice and shut. So we're going to put this end here onto the unit itself, and what we're going to do when we install it is put the rubber on, black rubber on first, and then push the white all the way up as far as it can, then it's right against the inlet on the unit. And then the other end, we'll trim this down to size once the first one's been installed, and then this other one we'll do the same thing on the pump outlet, and that's the fuel line from the unit to the fuel pump. Give the whole thing a good tug. That looks good. So I've already installed my white fuel line into the tank. I did that on another video because I had to drop the tank and drill into the top of the fuel tank. I didn't include that in this video because most 2008 I think Sprinters should already have an auxiliary fuel line, and a lot of other vans will as well, already have an auxiliary fuel line coming out near the fuel filler. So that's not something that most people will have to do. If you do already just have an auxiliary fuel line there, you should be able to just push this white fuel line into it, or there might be some kind of like clipping device or something that the manufacturers put there that you might need to buy an adapter for to attach to this white fuel line. But once you've done either method, all you need to do is to run that fuel line to the start of your pump, cut it, put on the black joiners again, and then that will be your fuel from the tank to the pump done. And now that's the whole fuel system done. So this is the start of the exhaust pipe and the clamp. This will attach to the bottom of the unit. It says to put 2 slits about 15 to 20 mils down, just then you can get it up and over top of the unit. Clamp over it, tighten it up, and that should be good. So now I'm just going to put the fiberglass insulated heat shield over top of the wrap. Twist it at the same time because this metal, some of it is quite sharp as well, so we'll just twist that on. That's how it will lie. It's still quite a distance away from the fuel pump, and then we'll go down here. What I might actually do is cut off 150 mil of this because it's not close to anything that can mount, and actually put it closer to where the fuel tank inlet is, just to kind of insulate that against the heat a little bit more. So I'll take it off, make a cut in it, and then move it down. To hold these pipes on, they haven't included any like metal clips or ties or anything. They've only just included some plastic zip ties, so I'm not 100% sure this should be used, but I'll keep an eye on it after the first time you run it really hot, that the plastic won't mount on this insulation. But we push it up over it, zip it up, and then that should keep it in place. So for the exhaust route, I'm thinking the exhaust should come down here, over top of the filler neck, and down here is where I'm going to put my muffler. Which is lucky because this is just a beam for the vehicle, so there's nothing on the inside of this. Check that, so now I can drill a hole and mount that bracket into there. Perfect. So I'm just going to mark with the Sharpie where I want to make my cut roughly. So now that I'm not underneath the vehicle, I can see my mark, and then just with the craft knife I'm just going to kind of try and slice around it. So that didn't cut too nicely. Kind of started unraveling itself on it. So I just put another 2 slices 15 to 20 centimeters down to get it over top of the muffler. So now this is all we have left of the exhaust pipe, and at the end of the exhaust pipe there's meant to be this little, I don't know what you'd call it, restrictor. It says that there's meant to be a 10mm gap there to there, so we'll just put this metal clip over top, get about a 10mm gap there, and tighten that up. I take it this is to stop maybe water from coming in, or to maybe make it a little bit quieter. And there we go. I've also put the 2 slits in this side as well, and this side will go to the end of the muffler. Exhaust done. Now there's 3 piles of wiring. One is the power with 2 fuses in it, terminals to connect to the battery, and then terminals to connect up to the heater unit. Another one which goes from the heater unit to this controller, which controls when it turns on, when it turns off, etc. And then the last one is the wiring that goes from the unit through these little terminals into this plug and into the fuel pump. So we're going to do this one first, as that's the last thing underneath the vehicle that we have to do. I've started by feeding the fuel pump down through the hole next to the seat, so I'll just plug that in and then we'll jump to underneath the vehicle. Can I do it one-handed? I can. So I forgot to film this, but once you do pull your cord from underneath the vehicle, there's 2 little bits that you just push into this little clip. That's just so then you don't have this big clip that you have to push through any gaps. And then this will just push up into the fuel pump. Wiring's done for the fuel pump. All of this is the excess wiring from the fuel pump wiring. One is that length there. I think this cord is 6 meters long, I think it says. I only need 30 centimeters of it. So I'll cut that down last once I've made sure that everything's all working. The next 2 to be hooked up is your control screen and the power wire to the unit. Both of these are going to be routed in different places depending on where your batteries are. We've got our batteries underneath our bed, so for the wiring for them is going to run through here and then up into the batteries, and the controller's going to be around there as well and fit on with the rest of our control panels next to that. So I'm not going to show too much of this in detail. Basically the plugs just hook up, you can't put them around the wrong way. I'll get on to that now. So this is the power wire from the unit. It has fuses and then it just has a negative and positive lead which I've attached to our batteries, and I think now it's time to turn it on and see if it works. It's starting to go warm.
Yay!
Dope, sick at it. Oh, my head, I hit it on something.
Thanks for watching our video. If you enjoyed it, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe.